But you love your work, I know it. It cannot flow through you if you will not let it, like magic cannot flow through you in this rich, magical environment. I expect you would be a better witch. A better witch, thought Cecilia, wondering what he meant. Oh, but of course, she had a little residual magic, and here she was supposed to be pretending to be able to do magic. Cecilia, she felt a hand on her shoulder. You try hard. But it is clear that you are a witch who has learned magic in her environment. Red hair, prefer to work alone, hard to get along with people. You spoke to Ragnhild about her research too? Cecilia asked, smiling a little. Lyd smiled too. You had trouble with the research for your husband not because you didn't know the spells but you didn't have the ability to perform them. You are either a non-wizard or a wizard with very limited magic but has learned to adapt, and your brilliance is, not in your magic but your resilience in continuing to work, day in, day out, to do what Professor Anderson, these children, find easy. Cecilia felt herself turn, to look at the face that she held in her mind's eye all too readily, her own tear-streaked, angry. Angry at herself, angry at the world. The work is not easy, but I think you will find it so, continued Lyd. But it is ... something, I confess, that I cannot do precisely because I cannot stop my magic. You can. And you can do this for me. You are the only person who can, I imagine. You are not washed up, Mrs. Lupin. Far from it. This work I do, it concerns rather more science than magic. It needs someone with logic and foresight and determination. Tabitha Penright gave me the start I needed. And you have merely had so much more to deal with in your life up to yet than another person of your age. There is beauty in resilience. His brown eyes shimmered like the darkest of amber in the brightest of sunlight. There is nobility in strength of character. And I cannot walk this path alone. My hand is empty. So, if you please, I would humbly ask you again, Mrs. Lupin, will you be the one to hold it? As if a shroud of all the years had been taken from her body, as if the weight of the whole of Durmstrang, and Hedgewoods, had been lifted off too, Cecilia got to her feet, with more energy than she felt that she had possessed in many years, and smiled a smile of unfettered happiness. What do you need me to do? He held out a hand, his palm upwards, inviting her to take it. She looked down. It was small, delicate, like a porcelain ornament, but it seemed to have the might of the strongest titanium-aluminium alloy. She extended her own and curled it around his. A bite of coldness drove into her palm as his touched hers. How cold his hands were! It was no wonder he liked to keep his classroom warm if his hands were cold like this. If you would come with me, Mrs. Lupin. I think it would be better in my classroom, it is warmer in there, and you look as if you need a little refreshment. Did you eat dinner? Cecilia shook her head. Stew, I think the house elves have made. I'll have them send something up to my classroom. Now, would you be so kind as to accompany me, Mrs. Lupin? 88,888,888. I have a potion which I have formulated that reduces the person's background energy to that of the environment. Up here, in Durmstrang, in the cold, it helps to minimize it further still, and acts like a semiconductor between the body's cells for the metabolism of the energy. Cecilia nodded. It was fundamental magical scientific theory, something here, in the new place, that was a given in the same way that parental DNA testing was an unquestioned fact. Sitting by the fireplace, Lindveld had sealed his classroom door too, once Cecilia had eaten, and he held up the colorless liquid. Cecilia stared at it, from his own teacher's chair before getting up for a closer look. Lyd gave it to her, unquestioningly, before removing a second bottle from his robe, identical to that she had taken. It works with emotion, and I believe it can be altered either by genetic conditions, or by nurture, given the correct energy signature. It's like musical harmony, like a symphony composed by the best, played by a virtuoso on the best instruments in the best opera house. You need all of the conditions to be right. All that's for the future, of course, he added, watching Cecilia look at the vial. This has to be the first thing, or else there will be no reason to test anything else. And Cecilia thought. Harry Potter, being saved in the old place, by his mother's love, that was the emotion. Then. If that potion had been drunk by him in the ministry, at the right time. If Voldemort had been there, the place was like an echo chamber, the spell could not fail, and he was by the veil. It all made sense. It all made beautiful sense. The conditions had to be right. If he had the potions. If he had the place. He had the protection, of course, from his mother, but it had to be right at the same time. She stared at Lindveld. It feels like natural magic to me, she said. It feels. No. This is going to sound foolish. Go on? He urged, gently. It feels like how nature intended magic to be, the conditions all to be right. If you look at science, science is just humans manipulating the laws of nature. It seems as if you've just stumbled on how time spells work, and they might just work because the world has evolved like that. What? She added, self-consciously, as Shiria's lid was staring at her. Well put, he replied. And, we should continue, Mr. Halen, added Cecilia, taking the initiative to move across to the fireplace. He motioned to her to drink the contents, as he did so himself. Cecilia paused. Did she want to spill her emotions to this wizard? One she was feeling none too professional feelings to? Dare I not? Her second thoughts shot back, across her cerebellum, trying to ignore her physical instincts towards him, attractive as his brain was to her. So, Cecilia was realizing, were Wizard's handsome features. She had promised, and in a week she would be gone. She had fought stronger feelings than this. Lindveld Halen was just to walk in the park to overcome the young man. It wasn't his fault. Besides, Ragnhild had told her not to worry, and to let go the guard to her feelings. She uncorked the potion, waiting for it to taste disgusting, and was pleasantly surprised when it tasted of lemon water. Well, they did things differently in Scandinavia, didn't they? I have a husband who is seriously ill. Cecilia scolded herself. I cannot, I will not. Beside the wizard she sat as she looked at the grate. From his sitting position, Lindveld was holding his wand. The fire glowed, not a hot red, or a yellow, but flickered a blackness, a void, as if it was space itself moving away from the atoms around it. Scientists had the name for something like this, and Cecilia knew that astronomers had shown that one of these exists at the center of every galaxy. With merriment in his face, Lindveld Halen offered her his hand. Cecilia took it. What she was doing there, sitting by this younger wizard, participating in his experiment, when logic told her everything was wrong about all of this, a part of her brain was still screaming at her about it. She didn't know. But she knew a person asking her for help, and it was one thing she found the most difficult thing to refuse. She looked at Lindveld, who smiled broadly at her. Ready? What is it you need me to do? Nothing. Just be yourself. I need only to record the background of the spell in the environment, Cecilia, with you beside me. Then I will know. If you feel anything, if your emotions are aroused, it will not matter, my manuscript will record the quantum wavelength data of our cellular metabolism of the energy, and compare them to both the background reading and also to one another. It's a black hole, isn't it? It's a black hole. Lindveld nodded. But we will just be at the very cusp of the event horizon. Are you ready? Ready to hold on to the cold hand of a wizard who I cannot rationalize my feelings about and participate in a quantum energy experiment on the outskirts of a black hole? She held his hand tighter. This time, It definitely felt warmer than it had done the first time. Yes, she nodded. Lyd circled his wand. And they were falling. Or were they flying? In any case, like old 1960s BBC animation, blackness was engulfing them. And Cecilia was feeling ... everything. 88,888,888. It was ... like I couldn't imagine it not doing, said Cecilia, clumsily, trying to think of words that accurately conveyed everything that she had sensed being in the black hole. She could, if she had wanted to, be interested in Lindeveld's science magic now, after experiencing that. But, a wise man once said that there were things that you could change, and things that you couldn't, and the wisdom came from knowing the difference. This was the difference. Her plate was full, as was her heart. As for her feelings, well ... they were best left unanalyzed for the moment. Lyd looked at her, then past her, and then let go of her hand. He stood up and made his way lightly towards his table. A manuscript had ... stopped producing writing as he waved his hand over it. Do you have what you need? It will take me some time to go over this. But, if you mean, did we carry the experiment out together correctly, then yes. It's as I wanted. I can't keep this void open for much longer, it's taking far too much energy. But it seems. He gave some of the work a cursory glance, moving his large, brown eyes up the page, scanning for information. Yes, I have what I want. I think, he said, turning a cursory smile to Cecilia. She shivered, and it was nothing to do with the temperature of the room, which was very warm. Lindeveld's fire irradiating infrared radiation around it very efficiently from the fireplace. So well designed, much better than in hers, and in her bedroom, too. That is to say, I think others will have a hard time challenging it and succeeding. All of it makes sense from all I can see. It's the theory that makes everything make sense, sighed Lindeveld, his brown eyes glowing with what seemed like an inner fire. Then he looked across at Cecilia. Without you, without being here, without traveling to here, to now. He paused, then continued, like yourself, Cecilia, without help, it could have been months ... years. I am glad to have found you. And are you, nodded Cecilia, scrambling for the feelings let loose by the experiment lest they chose some inappropriate words with which to represent her. Now for the hard part. I'll be leaving at the end of the week, Lindeveld, and it's unlikely that I'll be returning to Durmstrang. I meant what I said in my classroom. I want to be with my family. You helped me with my husband's potion, and my son misses me, and I him, dreadfully. If my help meant as much to you as yours did to me, then I thank you. Cecilia took some steps across the oak planks towards the door, looking at them, willing her inferior magic to make them open. Obligingly, Lindeveld reversed his security spells, and stood by her, his face light with happiness. I thank you, Cecilia. You took a risk for me. It was far more than I did on your behalf. However, is that true, what you say? You plan to leave Durmstrang? Cecilia nodded, her head just a little unsteady. It was probably just the experience she had gone through. Her inner ear was probably very disorientated from the time-space location she had been in and was causing the unsettled feeling in her stomach. Then may I take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you for being my colleague, Cecilia Lupin, and inspiring me, and working with me. Cecilia held out a hand, but the young wizard bypassed that and pulled her close, hugging her for what seemed like an eternity, before letting go, smiling broadly and saying goodbye. The steps to her bedroom seemed fewer and less effortful than they usually did that evening. Despite being kept up a few more hours than she had intended, Cecilia opened her bedroom door, and then closed it, her back pressed to it, more to keep herself from running out of it than anyone or anything from coming in. Forcing her footsteps over to her bed, Cecilia lay there, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, trying to drag the image of her Durmstrang colleague out of her head as she pulled her knees close, remembering the close embrace from Lindveldhalen as her mind chased sleep and amnesiacal dreams. 88,888,888. Leaning on the nearest memory cloud, Tabitha Penright rested. Not that, down here, she needed to rest, in the conventional sense, but, like amputees needing to exercise missing limbs, she rested, and thought. The man had gone, out of sight, once before, and that had been before the wave cloud had backed up, like a tsunami, and washed around the ... place, leaving behind, in its wake, a different set of cloud memories. It had taken Tabitha all her might to cling on where she had been, for she knew the memory cloud she had got to was very important. Its effect was, as she had predicted, been to correct for an untruth planted within a pensive. She had postulated this before, and recorded it in the mysterial ledgers. No doubt someone would find it and realize it was important. Whether it would be at the time that the memory had corrected itself, and caused repercussions in the world, or not, that remained to be seen. To see the inner workings of the universe, so speak, was to see the world as an inventor might the outside of a car, looking at the rods, springs, axles and gears. And, like a car's frame, it could be manipulated from the outside. Of course, nobody believed that was possible. No one, except for Tabitha Penright. She was famed for having really crazy ideas. However, coming into fashion in magical research was the notion of balance, and so, whereas, 12 years previously, when Tabitha had suggested that a particular balance of magical skill, not too little, not too much, in a place where there was a particular magical frequency, then this may access magic that other wizards could not, then the idea was dismissed. Wizards, the prevailing theory had gone, meant the stronger the better. But now, all she could do was ... do. No one else could have done this. Their magic was too strong to survive passing beyond the veil to the store of billions of memories in a dimension unnameable, and return. But she had done it, and proved that she could. And, more to the point, Cecilia Lupin had done it too, but this had been more pure chance than anything. Who could have predicted her arrival at that particular day and time and location? Well, who could? With that thought in her mind, it was truly appropriate for Tabitha Penright to turn. For the man whom she had followed all those ... events ago ... was now there, this time indicating to Tabitha ... exactly where to begin. Tabitha felt a calmness overcome her. Now was the time. The man was only there for a moment, but there for long enough for her to see him. Perhaps that was the point. In any case, he was just a few memory clouds away, and so was ... the other figure. Both were in the proximity of a memory cloud each. So ... this was where to begin. Not one to judge the actions of others, Tabitha made her way tentatively over to where they had been, making sure that she didn't disturb the others, in case they floated off into the ether and caused a domino effect of floating away, which may push the ones of interest out of reach. Once she had got there, Tabitha realized that it was somewhere she had been before. Darker than the moonless night was this room, and yet, it was still confined. People were there and, from where Tabitha stood, she could make out a door and frame. From the reflected light of the door, more clues as to where she was became apparent. Beds, metal-framed ones, were arranged, spaced out with what looked like fabric suspended between each one. From where she was standing, Tabitha could just make out the raised figure of a person lying on the bed, flat, still. Dead? Was this the mortuary at the basement of the Ministry for Magic? It was kept in almost the same condition as here. Yet, there seemed to be voices, and life here. There seemed to be bustle around the other beds, with people carefully moving between them. If she listened closely she could hear people talking about. I've given him his nightly potion. 2 more doses. I think we will have her out of here by the end of the week. No change, I'm afraid, sir. A hospital. St. Mungo's surely, with the mention of potion. Tabitha looked hard, wondering whether she could see her friend Grace there. Amazing they called her, not just because her name was Grace, but because she really was amazing with the potions she had made. There was a movement in the shadows. By the bed in which Tabitha could not be seen, for she existed in a different temporal plane, a figure swept past her. The figure paused for a moment, looking about themselves as if being incredibly cautious. The figure leaned over the bed, taking the hand of the person within it, then leaned over the person's head. In the almost darkness, to Tabitha it looked as if the person was kissing the one lying still in bed. And then, the figure sat at the end of the bed, waiting, watching. The door opened to reveal a shaft of light from another room. The light cut through the darkness like a knife through warm butter, showing little of the figure, except for a witch's pointy hat atop a witch's head. As Tabitha tried to move in on the scene, to get a better look and discern any more detail that the memory had to offer, it began to fade, and the memory began to auto-eject her, through a fog-like part of a cloud. She must remember to try to slow down, she reminded herself, otherwise she would come straight off it and would lose it forever. And she mustn't lose this. For this was the start. The very first memory. The one where her, Tabitha Penwhite, her theory was going to be tested, by attempting to manipulate and control the memories back here in order to try to make changes, temporary or permanent, back in the world from which she, and the memories, had come. Fortunately, she landed softly on the memory's outer surface. It was as if she had landed on the outer surface of a dandelion clock, with a little U to indicate that she did indeed have matter here, and the memories did indeed had a kind of gravity. Next to her, the other. Leaping very ungracefully, Tabitha let out behind her what might be called a rope. It was silvery white, in the same color as the memories around her. What it actually was some sort of ... Well, she had described it to Aberforth Dumbledore as a timekeeper, which would allow the memories to be tethered together. How it actually worked was a lot more complicated than that and involved the use of muons, tachyons and other subatomic particles that make physicists very successful at Scrabble, though not very popular. And what did this contain? Tabitha knew that she didn't even need to know. But for the sake of completeness, and the fact that time did not matter here, she went in, tethering the memory to start with very securely at the surface. 8,888,888. I know you must be worried about Sam, but that's no way to treat James. That's all I'm saying. Sirius had graduated from his bed now, at Grimmauld Place, and was now resting on the sofa. At least, resting was what he was supposed to be doing. In actual fact, he was getting himself into an accidental argument with Lily Potter, and for the life of him he didn't know how that had happened or why. It's nothing to do with Sam. Or Henrietta. Or anything else you've mentioned, Sirius. And, what business is it of yours? Mine and James's marriage, anyway. Lily, her back to her so-called friend, had arrived that afternoon to Grimmauld Place to discuss the arrangements for Christmas. It had been agreed that there was to be a small Christmas Eve celebration, as usual, for the reciprocators, and that they would celebrate on Christmas Day there with a turkey altogether, with as many people that wanted to stop, including the children from Hedgewoods. While Lily and James's house was now nearly back to its former glory, having been burned down in an attack, they no longer stopped as often as they had once done. However, James had taken to doing so, having taken on the role of temporary head of the reciprocators when Cleus had stood down, just after Halloween. Of course, Cleus had too much on. Of course it was too much for one man. It was too much for Aberforth, but he had managed it. Merlin knew how. It was now left up to the mere mortals of wizards, so to speak, to get on with the vacant roles he had left behind. So, what is bothering you, Lils? Asked Sirius, trying to defuse the situation. "'Cause you haven't been the same in ages. Look, there's been fewer attacks since the trial. James hasn't needed to spend as much time here killing everyone on triple shifts. The conjurist bastards haven't stepped a toe out of line since the heroes have been on their backs and the non-wizard police. They've even got those newers helping, with Petunia." He smiled. Lily didn't. She turned her head away, glaring at the fire. "Petunia," spat Lily, in disgust. "She chooses non-wizardry? Makes herself out to be better than us. And then, when a massive thing like this comes along, Sam gets put on trial, she waltzes in and pitches in to help as if it's no bother at all." "So it is to do with Sam," Miz concluded Sirius, shaking his head. "No," yelled Lily. "Can't you see? She's taking over. Next, we'll have Mrs. High and Mighty Lupin back over here, with her ways. Poor Henrietta." Lily sank down in a chair opposite the fire, turning away from Sirius, who stared at her, uncomprehendingly. Finally, he thought of something to say. "That won't happen. Cecilia's over there, if that's what you're worried about. Callias wants her there, at Durmstrang for research. Me and Remus. When he went to visit over there, Callias explained that she was needed there for a good couple of years. So, if she bothers you that much, I wouldn't worry." Sirius twisted awkwardly the potion, though Wolfspan didn't seem to be combating the majority of the symptoms. He itched. And a bone would have gone down a treat right now. However, he wasn't entirely sure that wasn't to do with his metamorphomagus, too. "Do you need anything? Do you have your medicine? Snape's made enough for you, hasn't he?" Lily looked across to her friend as he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Yes," he nodded. "A glass of water would be good." He explained he needs to refine it a bit more. He said that he's only ever treated those who have contracted it young, or inherited the disease, and I had a slightly different strain. The Wolfspan will work, but he's going to spend time refining it. I was too ill to testify at the trial. I am sorry if it didn't help Sam. "It was a bloody show trial," called Lily through the hatch as she went to get Sirius the water. "No offense, Sirius, but I think Draco Malfoy had made up his mind to let Blewit and Swales off, as an example. They had to do something to punish Sam for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. But it didn't help them with that dodgy memory." She placed the glass on the black, iron-wrought table by Sirius, walking over to the window of 12, Grimmauld Place and staring out of it, malevolently. "Pettigrew," replied Sirius, simply. Lily turned, slowly. "What? What did you say?" "Peter Pettigrew was in charge of that memory. Others too. I wasn't called to give evidence, Lily, but I was savaged by Swales' half-breeds. As was Remus. Why wasn't I called?" "Because you were too ill," replied Lily, still staring out at the park which 12, Grimmauld Place faced, tears pricking at the back of her eyes. "You weren't strong enough to." "Oh, but I was." That was just Cleus's excuse. He knew that, if I did, my memory would have to be verified through Hovel security. And that's where the problems lie. Either incompetence or sabotage. That's why that memory, the one the defense based their whole case upon, turned out to be false. It had been stored in the Hovel office, in the safekeeping of Peter Pettigrew. "Peter Pettigrew!" exclaimed Lily, her hand to her head. "The only boy who could catch the snitch for the other team." "Precisely. So, can you imagine his case resting on my memories, having been stored with Peter Pettigrew? I mean, he means well, but how had he got so far in life? How did he rise so high? Maddie-eye Moody, yes, I can understand, although he is constantly paranoid. Do you do you think your memories would have could have changed the course of the trial?" Lily's voice was quiet now, almost worryingly so. She had a headache as she pictured ... What? Who knows? It would have been accurate. It would have shown the court what we faced. It was just so quick. Me, the werewolf, Remus the vampire, and why you the werewolf and Remus the vampire? Snapped Lily, folding her arms tight. He could have had a chance then. Lily? Why you, here and not him? Why James and not Kilius? Why Cecilia Lupin? Why my sister, who has already had her luck with the non-wizard world, and your brother whose genius with that mucky industry the flu has got him raking it in, by all accounts, with Dudley as an apprentice. There's even no need for her to work, she can volunteer, counsel victims, counsel me on my woes. Sirius made his way tentatively over to Lily, putting his hands carefully on her shoulders. We have done no wrong, Sirius. We have worked, and worked as reciprocators for years, and years, with no glory, with no thanks. And now, just because of the news, it's so fashionable and trendy to be into helping non-wizards, or reforming conjurists ... makes you wonder what we've bothered doing anything for. We've laid the groundwork, counselled Sirius. Without us, without James, even now, there would be no model, no example. He pulled her close to as Lily Potter began to sob. I have to go, she said at length, as her sobs died away. Look, I'll do whatever you need at Christmas, I'll put on the happiest face, pretend all is well. But now, he has no one. He needs someone. It's as if the whole world has forgotten what happened to you both. Neither of you got mentioned at the trial, and he's still stuck there, with no one. Sirius took a few unsteady steps back, closing his eyes. Remus was still there. Remus did have no one. All that Lily said was true. Severus is working on his potion all the time, he said. He never stops. In fact, he said, trying to get the distraught witch's attention, I told him to prioritize Remus over me. I can cope, Remus may not be able to. Lily closed her eyes. I'll be back in an hour. Harry has my work for now. There are a few things I need to discuss with you, Sirius, she added. Certainly, agreed Sirius, as Lily disapparated. It's not hard to guess what they might be. 88,888,888. They may be the land without magic, but, give them their due, Gellert, the conjurists in Britain are not without common sense. A land frozen in the depths of winter, not unlike that of the Durmstrang Institute. Unlike the Durmstrang Institute, the two great, powerful wizards of Central Europe lived in a large chalet in the High Alps, 1,000 meters above a tiny village bearing his surname. Whatever do you mean, Albus? I thought you were keeping clear of that foggy isle for a good long time? Those wizards making trouble, I mean. We were going to wait until it died away? Indeed, nodded Albus Dumbledore, shaking a hand in the direction of his lover. However, I ventured to contact one of my most faithful contacts for the briefest of moments. It would seem that, concurring with my advice, the movement has taken to abhorring modern wizarding communication technology. That fool of a minister has reinstated Pensieves. But, of course, they are inherently traceable and therefore useless to us. Clever indeed. And very simple. Your plan? Albus Dumbledore looked up from his prime pensive. It would seem that the clouds were behaving particularly dynamically of late. We will wait. There is no immediate rush. Things will take their own course. And besides, your job will be to keep Blue-Wit calm. He will wait. Fraser is level-headed. In fact, I believe we have underestimated that young man. Not I, replied Gellert Grindelwald. However, he added, soothingly, he had time to grow and shape. The other disappointments ... have found their own ends. Indeed they have, Albus replied, looking pointedly into the prime pensive. All here, for me to pick through at leisure. including ... the witch who sits. Oh my dear, you will be so upset to hear that she is distraught for her lover, who is not yet well. I am indeed sorry, replied Grindelwald, as he replaced a book in the vast, semicircular arch of our library that was situated opposite Albus's pensieve, and sounded it. And, may I say, how lucky we are to be this far along. 4 months to go and your view will be clearer, dearest. It is of no matter the conjurists have not overthrown the non-wizards yet. There is more than enough time. Let us not be hasty. With no witnesses to leave untidy evidence, we even have 2 non-transmutable objects in our possession. Albus Dumbledore put down his wand, from which a stream of white fog had erupted, connecting it to his temple, which he had guided into the pensieve, putting it into the memory store. My dear, we do not need to be hasty. By Christmastide, he will have brought us the 3rd